Our Solar System. Our Solar System by me. Our solar system consists of our star, the Sun, and everything bound to it by gravity. The planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, dwarf planets such as Pluto, dozens of moons, and millions of asteroids, comets, and meteorites. Beyond our own solar system, we have discovered thousands of planetary systems orbiting other stars in the Milky Way. Our solar system extends much farther than the 8 planets that orbit the Sun. The solar system also includes the Kuiper belt that lies past Neptune's orbit. This is a sparsely occupied ring of icy bodies, almost all smaller than the most popular Kuiper belt object, dwarf planet Pluto. Beyond the fringes of the Kuiper belt is the Oort cloud. This giant spherical shell surrounds our solar system. It has never been directly observed, but its existence is predicted based on mathematical models and observations of comets that likely originate there. The Sun's heliosphere doesn't extend quite as far as the Oort cloud. The heliosphere is the bubble created by the solar wind, a stream of electrically charged gas blowing outwards from the Sun in all directions. The boundary where the solar wind is abruptly slowed by pressure from interstellar gases is called the termination shock. This edge occurs between 80 and 100 astronomical units. Our solar system formed about 4.5 billion years ago from a dense cloud of interstellar gas and dust collapsing and forming a solar nebula, a spinning, swirling disk of material. In the bottom right corner, you can see a GIF of the Big Bang, the most widely accepted theory of how the universe began. As at the center, gravity pulled in more and more material in. Eventually, the pressure in the core was so great that hydrogen atoms began to combine and form helium, releasing a tremendous amount of energy. With that, our sun was born, and it eventually amassed more than 99% of the available matter. Matter farther out in the disk was clumping and smashing together, forming larger and larger objects. Some of them grew big enough for their gravity to shape them into spheres, becoming planets, dwarf planets, and large moons. In other cases, planets did not form. The asteroid belt is made of bits and pieces of the early solar system that could never quite come together into a planet. Other smaller leftover pieces became asteroids, comets, meteorites, and smaller regular moons. So, the first planet we have in the solar system is Mercury. Mercury is the planet closest to the Sun and is also the smallest planet. From the surface of Mercury, the Sun would appear more than 3 times as large as it does when viewed from Earth, and the sunlight would be as much as 7 times brighter. Mercury is the fastest planet, zipping around the Sun every 88 Earth days. With a radius of 1,516 miles, Mercury is a little more than 1/3 the width of Earth. If Earth were the size of a nickel, Mercury would be about as big as a blueberry. From an average distance of 36 million miles, Mercury is 0.4 astronomical units away from the Sun. 1 astronomical unit, abbreviated as AU, is the distance from the Sun to the Earth. From this distance, it takes sunlight 3.2 minutes to travel from the Sun to Mercury. Mercury spins slowly on its axis and completes 1 rotation every 59 Earth days. But when Mercury is moving fastest in its elliptical orbit around the Sun, and it's closest to the Sun, each rotation is not accompanied by a sunrise and sunset like it is on most other planets. The morning sun appears to rise briefly, set, and rise again from some parts of the planet's surface. The same thing happens in reverse at sunset for other parts of the surface. 1 Mercury solar day, 1 full day night cycle, equals 176 Earth days, just over 2 years on Mercury. Mercury's axis of rotation is tilted just 2 degrees with respect to the planet of its orbit around the Sun. This means it spins nearly perfectly upright, and so does not experience seasons like many other planets do. Mercury is the second densest planet after Earth. It has a large metallic core with a radius of about 1,289 miles. There is evidence that it is partly molten or liquid. Mercury's outer shell, comparable to Earth's outer shell called the mantle and crust, is only about 400 kilometers thick. Mercury formed about 4.5 billion years ago when gravity pulled swirling gas and dust together to form this small planet nearest the Sun. Like its fellow terrestrial planets, Mercury has a central core, a rocky mantle, and a solid crust. Mercury's surface resembles that of Earth's moon, scarred by the impacts of craters resulting from collisions with meteoroids and comets. Craters and features on Mercury are named after famous deceased artists, musicians, or authors, including children's author Dr. Seuss and dance pioneer Alvin Ailey. Most of Mercury's surface would appear grayish-brown to the human eye. The brighter streaks are called crater rays. They are formed when an asteroid or comet strikes the surface. The tremendous amount of energy that is released in such an impact digs a big hole in the ground and also crushes a huge amount of rock under the point of impact. Some of this crushed material is thrown far from the crater and then falls to the surface, forming the rays. Fine particles of crushed rock are more reflective than larger pieces, so the rays look brighter. The sun, the space environment, dust impacts, and solar wind particles cause the rays to darken with time. Temperatures on the surface of Mercury are extreme, both hot and cold. During the day, temperatures on Mercury's surface can reach 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Because the planet has no atmosphere to retain that heat, nighttime temperatures on the surface can drop to negative 290 degrees Fahrenheit. Instead of an atmosphere, Mercury possesses a thin exosphere made up of atoms blasted off the surface by solar winds and striking meteors. Mercury's exosphere is composed of mostly oxygen, sodium, hydrogen, helium, and potassium. The GIF in the bottom right corner is of Mercury's transit, which is when the planet passes between the Sun and the Earth.
Go ahead, YouTube.
Mercury's magnetic field is offset relative to the planet's equator. Though Mercury's magnetic field at the surface has just 1% the strength of Earth's, it interacts with the magnetic field of the solar winds to sometimes create intense magnetic tornadoes that funnel the fast hot solar wind plasma down to the surface of the Earth. When ions strike the surface, they knock off neutrally charged atoms and send them to a loop into the sky. Mercury has no moon. Mercury's environment is not conducive to life as we know it. The temperatures and solar radiation that characterize this planet are most likely too extreme for organisms to adapt to. The more you know. Mercury has a huge crater called the Caloris Basin. The impact that caused this crater was so huge that it formed hills on the other side of the planet. The element Mercury was named after the planet. Alchemists once thought they could make gold from Mercury. Mercury is named after the Roman god Mercury. Mercury was the messenger to the gods and the god of travelers and merchants. Mercury orbits the Sun faster than any other planet. Early Greek astronomers thought it was two planets. They called the one they saw at sunrise Apollo and the one they saw at sunset Hermes. Mercury has the most eccentric, lace-round orbit of all the planets. Next up, Venus. Venus is the second planet from the Sun and our closest planetary neighbor. Similar in structure and size to Earth, Venus spins slowly in the opposite direction from most planets. Its thick atmosphere traps heat in a runaway greenhouse effect, making it the hottest planet in our solar system, with surface temperatures hot enough to melt lead. Glimpses below the clouds reveal volcanoes and deformed mountains. Venus is named after the ancient Roman goddess of love and beauty, who was known as Aphrodite to the ancient Greeks. With a radius of 3,760 miles, Venus is roughly the same size as Earth, just slightly smaller. And in the bottom right corner, you can see an image of Venus. From an average distance of 67 million miles, Venus is 0.7 astronomical units away from the Sun. 1 astronomical unit, abbreviated as AU, is the distance from the Sun to Earth. It takes sunlight 6 minutes to travel from the Sun to Venus. Venus's rotation and orbit are unusual in several ways. Venus is one of just 2 planets that rotate from east to west. Only Venus and Uranus have this backwards rotation. It completes 1 rotation in 243 Earth days, the longest day of any planet in our solar system, even longer than a whole year on Venus. But the Sun doesn't rise and set each day on Venus like it does on most other planets. On Venus, 1 day-night cycle takes 117 Earth days because Venus rotates in the direction opposite of its orbital revolution around the Sun. Venus makes a complete orbit around the Sun, a year in Venetian time, in 225 Earth days, or slightly less than 2 Venetian day Earth cycles. Its orbit around the Sun is the most circular of any planet, nearly a perfect circle. Other planets' orbits are more elliptical or oval-shaped. With an axis tilt of just 3 degrees, Venus spins nearly upright and so does not experience notable seasons. Venus is in many ways similar to Earth in its structure. It has an iron core that is approximately 2,000 miles in radius. Above that is a mantle made of hot rock slowly churning due to the planet's interior heat. The surface is a thin crust of rock that bulges and moves as Venus's mantle shifts and creates volcanoes. When the solar system settled into its current layout about 4.5 billion years ago, Venus formed when gravity pulled swirling gas and dust together to form the second planet from the Sun. Like its fellow terrestrial planets, Venus has a central core, a rocky mantle, and a solid crust. From space, Venus is bright white because it is covered with clouds that reflect and scatter sunlight. At the surface, the rocks are different shades of gray, like rocks on Earth, but the thick atmosphere filters the sunlight so that everything would look orange if you were standing on Venus. Venus is covered in craters, but none are smaller than 0.9 to 1.2 miles across. Small meteoroids burn up in the dense atmosphere, so only large meteoroids can reach the surface and create impact craters. Almost all the surface features on Venus are named after noteworthy Earth women, both mythological and real. A volcanic crater is named for Sacagawea, the Native American who guided Lewis and Clark's exploration. A deep canyon is named for Diana, Roman goddess of the hunt. Venus's atmosphere consists of mainly carbon dioxide with clouds of sulfuric acid droplets. The thick atmosphere traps the sun's heat, resulting in surface temperatures higher than 880 degrees Fahrenheit. The atmosphere has layers with different temperatures. At the level where the clouds are about 30 miles up from the surface, it is about the same temperature as on the surface of Earth. As Venus moves forward in its solar orbit while slowly rotating backwards on its axis, the top level of clouds zips around the planet every 4 Earth days, driven by hurricane-force winds traveling about 224 miles per hour. Atmospheric lightning bursts light up in these quick-moving clouds. Speeds within the clouds decrease with cloud height, and the surface are estimated to be just a few miles per hour. On the ground, Venus's atmosphere would look like a very hazy, overcast day on Earth, and the atmosphere is so heavy that you would feel like you were 1 mile deep underwater. Even though Venus is similar in size to the Earth and has a similarly sized iron core, Venus's magnetic field is much weaker than Earth's due to Venus's slow rotation. Venus has no moons. No human has visited Venus, but the spacecraft that have been sent to the surface of Venus do not last very long there. Venus's high surface temperatures overheat electronics in spacecraft in a short time, so it is unlikely that a person could survive for long on the Venusian surface. There is speculation about life existing in Venus's distant past, as well as questions about the possibility of life in the top cloud layers of Venus's atmosphere, where the temperatures are less extreme. The more you know. Venus actually rotates backwards from the way the rest of the planets rotate. Some scientists believe this backwards rotation was caused by a giant impact with a large asteroid or comet. The atmospheric pressure on the surface of the planet is 92 times that of the Earth's. Venus has a unique lava feature called a pancake dome, or Pharah, which is a large pancake of lava. Venus is named after the Roman goddess of love. It is the planet that is named after a female. Venus is the 6th largest planet of the 8 planets. To be continued.